Hey everyone, we are back here with Rich Briddick, our Chief Strategy Officer. If you guys were listening to our opening session on introducing social media to your mix, this session is going to be a great follow-up because Rich is going to be talking about how to scale your media with media mix modeling, a different way of thinking about how to attribute the output with the marketing investment. So we're starting a few minutes late. I am going to get out of Rich's way. This is his session, and I'll see you back here in about 30 minutes for our media debate. So here you go, Rich.
Thanks very much, Lauren. Yeah, as Lauren said, we're about 10 minutes behind schedule, so I'm going to breeze through this topic. It's just a high-level overview anyway about media mix modeling, but a great introduction on how you guys can try and start to think about leveraging it to improve the effectiveness of your digital marketing efforts to drive patient acquisition. So without further ado, some of the things that we're going to cover off on in this session. Firstly, we'll talk about the problem statement that media mix modeling solves. Then why media mix modeling is the best solution for that problem statement. What is media mix modeling? Some of the limitations, things you'll need. And then touch briefly on our own iteration of media mix modeling, which we call RevRx, which is designed to bring the best of our best-in-class healthcare marketers together with modern technology and advanced models to help make the best investment decisions. So again, let's think about this problem statement. As marketers, we now work in very data-driven organizations, and we are constantly being asked, am I spending the dollar in the most effective place to drive my end goal? What am I getting from my channels? What am I truly driving in terms of patient acquisition and even incremental patient acquisition? Is the $100,000 that I spend on Google ads in September actually helping me to achieve my capacity goals or get enough in the pipeline to make sure that I have a successful end to Q3? That's a very difficult question to answer. The other difficult question is, where should I spend my next dollar? You know, we are now faced with an abundance of different options in terms of where we could spend dollars to drive patient growth in the digital ecosystem. Is it on social? Is it continuing to invest in search? Do I diversify my search program by adding in Microsoft ads? Do I test a UGC campaign on TikTok? Do I do some programmatic? Do I even do digital out of home leveraging billboards? There's all these options out here now, and especially as the patient journey becomes more complicated, different options have different benefits of engaging further or lower down that funnel, depending on what the need is. So this question becomes incredibly complex, and that's what MMM is designed to help us solve. So our desire as marketers, right, is that we are these data gurus that is pulling all this information together, and that we are, you know, we had this discussion yesterday, this panel about data and data activation, that we are all Russell Crowe and Beautiful Mind, and that we are activating, you know, we're collating all this data together, and then we are activating on it and making the best possible decisions against the data that we have at our fingertips. You know, we strive for things like closed loop, multi-touch attribution, machine learning forecasts that determine where we should spend the next dollar. This is the dream that we all have as marketers. The reality as marketers, though, is that we are faced with constant challenges that sometimes feel insurmountable. So HIPAA concerns was a huge one last year, right? Like all of a sudden, a lot of the tracking that we did have is now being taken away from us. We can't use pixels anymore. We don't have the visibility and the measurability that we'd become so used to. Walled gardens. This is a great one when you start going into meta ads as an example. Meta doesn't let you share information across platforms. So trying to understand if there was a meta engagement, especially if it was an impression, a view of a meta ad, and how that fits into your patient journey, very, very difficult to do. You know, that's one of the hardest things when it comes to multi-touch attribution, is understanding the contribution of ads that were seen but not clicked on. Shallow tracking, that's another huge problem for us when we think about measurability and answering what we're getting in terms of return on our investment. If we're just tracking a call, but we're not tracking that call outcome, how are we going to know if those calls that we were driven were actual new patient leads and new patient bookings, or if they were just vendors calling up to solicitors about, you know, whatever service they offer? And then another massive challenge is disparate attribution. So different ways of counting conversions, different mechanisms of counting conversions. You may end up as a marketer with 5 different platforms counting conversions in different ways. You're looking at the sum of all of those conversions and saying, oh, I drove 1,000 new patient leads this month. And then in reality, when you look in your CRM or your patient management system, you only see 200 new leads. And you're trying to understand what that disconnect is. And partly it's because those platforms are counting each other's conversions. Partly it's because a lead that's tracked by the platform does not equate to a lead or a new patient that ends up in your patient management system. So a lot of challenges that we face when we're trying to answer those core questions of how do I optimize my digital marketing mix and where should I invest my next dollar? So why MMM is such a game changer is it effectively removes a lot of these common impediments. So, and we'll get into this, but walled gardens with media mix modeling, because you're not trying to track every impression and every click, but you're correlating revenue with investment, walled gardens cease to become a problem. HIPAA concerns. We're no longer using pixels. Again, we're using a correlation between revenue and investment to determine if the investment decisions that we're making are driving an incremental improvement in our digital marketing efforts. We don't need pixels to do that. Shallow tracking. We're tracking revenue. So we're tracking the metric that everybody cares about, all the stakeholders, your CEO, your CFO, your COO, it's revenue, right? So we don't have to worry about, am I only tracking calls from ads and form submissions in my Google Ads platform? That's not what we're looking at anymore. So again, we solve for that problem. And then district attribution is also solved because, again, we're looking at revenue. We're looking at the revenue that your organization is driving as the KPI. So there's no multiple different ways of counting that, right? We're not trying to attribute that revenue specifically back to a platform based on their attribution model. We are just looking at the causation of the investment in media and then the revenue that's being driven. So now that I've told you how amazing MMM is and that it solves all of the challenges that you've been battling with for years, what actually is MMM? It feels like a very complex and difficult thing that is often felt only available to large organizations that have large data science teams. But MMM essentially is media mix modeling. It is essentially understanding, it's an analysis technique that allows you to understand the impact of marketing advertising campaigns and how they correlate with revenue that's driven with that end goal. How are the media investments that you're making contributing to your end goal, which is to drive more revenue or drive more new patient revenue? It uses multilinear regression to determine that relationship between the dependent variable, which is sales and engagements, i.e. revenue, and the independent variable, which is ad spend or marketing investment, if you're also looking at things like organic and email. That's really just a fancy way of saying it helps you to understand the correlation between what your activities are, what you're doing, what you're buying, and what that net outcome is, right? It's telling you if there is a positive correlation, if there's a negative correlation, or if there is no correlation in terms of when you are investing in media or investing in digital marketing efforts and the output, and then the impact on the output that you're getting down the road from that. Why is this awesome for us as healthcare performance marketers, right? Why is this so great? I mean, in addition to taking out all of those challenges that we've been constantly combating, it helps you track the thing that everybody cares about inside your organization, which is revenue, right? How much time as marketers are we perpetually having to justify the decisions that we're making, the budget that we've been given, the tests that we want to run, the photo shoot that we want to do, the ad shoot that we want to do, the creative that we want to invest in, the new website that we want to invest in. Well, media mix modeling helps us to justify those investments because it takes the conversation down to, if you give me X, I can return Y, and Y is revenue. And that is the thing that everybody cares about. They want to know how it's going to help grow the bottom line. And that's what media mix modeling is centered around. The other thing that your compliance folks are going to absolutely love you on is there's no need for pesky pixels with media mix modeling. Again, because we're just correlating investment and revenue, you don't need pixels to track that, right? Pixels don't track revenue, and we don't need to push any signals back to Google Ads for optimization with MMM. I mean, obviously, you do want to do that for other reasons. You want to have well-optimized campaigns that are driving the right outcomes. But for media mix modeling, there's no need to start tracking other things or passing data back to other systems that are going to create additional compliance risks and additional exposure. So your legal folks will be very happy with that. We also don't have the need for different systems to talk to each other. So we don't need for Facebook to talk to Google Ads, to talk to a DSP platform, to dedupe conversions across the three, because again, we're just using holistic revenue as our bottom line KPI. So there's no need to try and understand if platform A conversion is cannibalizing platform B conversion. There is no cannibalization. It's just understanding how much each channel is contributing to the end result, which is revenue, which is what your MMM model will do for you. View through, again, no problem for the same reason, right? We're not having to track an exposure to an impression, which is so difficult to capture holistically. Again, we just need to understand the correlation of if I suddenly start spending a ton of dollars at the top of the funnel on meta ads or on programmatic video and creating a boatload of awareness about my business or about a new service that I offer, do I then see a bump in revenue after I start running those campaigns? So again, it's just correlation. So another massive benefit about media mix modeling is it helps you to measure incrementality. Media mix modeling is all about incrementality. If I take some dollars that I was previously using on this campaign and I now fund this channel with it, do I see an incremental increase or decrease in my revenue? If I add another $50,000 to my marketing spend, do I see an incremental gain, and what is that incremental gain? And this is a great way for us. This is a slight detour, but a great way for us to start really thinking about performance as marketers, and sometimes something that we tend to miss occasionally, right? So in this scenario, on the left, I'm spending $300,000 a month. I decide to add $50,000 a month to my, let's say, my Google Ads spend. My CPA at $300,000 is $100. My CPA at $350,000 is $115. Leads driven at $300,000 is $3,000. The leads driven at $350 is $3,043. On the face of it, when you look at it like that, the performance looks okay, right? It's like CPA is 115. Maybe my max threshold or my max tolerance for CPA is 115, 120. So I'm feeling pretty good about this, right? I'm within my range. But when I actually start to look at the incremental cost per acquisition, what that next 50,000 actually drove for me, my incremental CPA was $1,162. So that incremental $50,000 of spend got me 43 leads, and each lead on average cost me over $1,000. Now, if I'm only making $500 for a new patient, or $300 for a new patient, all of a sudden that math doesn't make any sense, right? Because I'm losing money on those 43 new patients that came through the door because I paid $1,100 for them and I'm only getting $300 in terms of return. So it's really, really important for us to think about incremental performance as opposed to blended performance. And that's what media mix modeling really helps you do. So using that marginal economics helps you to diversify at the right point. So again, the blended CPA 115, the marginal CPA 1,162. I shouldn't have put that $50,000 of extra spend in search. What I should have done instead is I should have looked for other places in my media mix, maybe, or even more SEO, or even direct marketing or non-digital campaigns that could have driven a CPA much cheaper than that number on the right, which is essentially what I'm getting from my additional investment in paid search. So MMM, it isn't new. So why are we talking about it now? Well, previously, media mix modeling was definitely more of a Fortune 1000 play. It was specific agencies that just did media mix modeling, or specific teams inside of agencies that specialized in media mix modeling. And sometimes a MMM report would take 6 months to deliver. It would cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it really was the benefit that could only be afforded to the few, to those who had the budget to do it. But now it's become a lot more democratized. So with the rise of machine learning and AI, you have platforms now that are much cheaper costs, that allow you to start testing MMM much easier. It's a much more lower barrier to entry from an expense point of view. And also because it's using AI and machine learning in these models, you don't need a data science team anymore. You don't need 5-10 guys who can help crunch numbers. And the benefit of these platforms too is they now give you immediate outcomes, which is fantastic. So essentially, media mix modeling is a lot more available than it was before. What can you get from MMM? Essentially, you can input your historical data, and then you can get marketing plans aligned to business objectives, modeled out for you based on those objectives that you input into the model. So if it will ingest all of your historical spend and revenue, which we'll get to here in a second, and then it will give you an optimized plan in terms of where you should be spending, what your channel mix should be, and how that plan should vary over time. So it will even give you channel breakdowns, it will give you week breakdowns, it will give you the tactic breakdowns. It will give you a lot of information as marketers to leverage in order to optimize your media mix more effectively, and shift dollars from A to B in order to drive the outcome that you want to drive. So you can predict the future. Sure, as long as you're okay with a 5% margin of error. So what we see with MMM, and this comes over time, not immediately, is that we can achieve within a 5% margin of error on our forecasting in terms of what the model outputs around what the program should be. So, you know, that is a pretty high level of confidence. If you think about testing, if you think about A/B testing, you are looking for 95% confidence. This is essentially 95% confidence. If I take dollars out of search and invest in paid social, I have a 95% confidence level that I'm going to more effectively achieve the output that I'm looking for than if I keep those dollars inside of search. So MMM allows us to make very confident decisions that we can feel good about. And the good thing is, because we're using a model, the more we spend, the more we test, the more effective that model becomes, and the smaller that margin of error becomes. You can also help to train the model for the real world. So, you know, if you just say, hey, generate the most amount of revenue model, it might give you stuff that doesn't make sense for your business because it's not taking into account things like capacity needs, seasonality, competitive pressure, de novo openings into net new markets, promotional periods that you're running. But the great news is you can inform the model by inputting these macro factors to make the output of the model work and be a true representation of your business. So all these things can be handled up front to make sure that the output that you're getting is as valuable as possible in terms of the recommendations. What do you need to get started? It's not a massive lift. 22 months of bottom line revenue, 22 months of spend by tactic and by channel in terms of your marketing mix, and then those macro level inputs that I talked about just now, like seasonality, capacity needs, etc. Those all go into the model. Then you get your optimized channel mix out the other side. So we have a MMM solution that we're coining RevRx. And just 1 minute on this. Where RevRx really differs from you just going out and getting an off-the-shelf MMM solution is that we're combining best-in-class media mix modeling solutions driven by AI with the expertise of healthcare marketers. Because the one challenge of MMM is it's great that MMM can tell you in that example that we talked about earlier, hey, you should shift dollars from search to social because your incremental search investment is driving an $1,162 CPA. But the problem with MMM is it can't tell you how to run the individual channels in your mix more effectively. Your search campaigns, that $50,000 could be ineffective because your search campaigns are just not being ran well, or they're not being ran well to take on that incremental $50,000 in an effective way because the structure is constrained and taps out at that $300,000 investment. So the way that RevRx differs is that It takes our healthcare expertise to help you use the model in conjunction with those expertise to make sure that we're getting the most out of each individual channel within the model. And then the model can make the best the best channel mix investment decisions across those individual channels. All right, some FAQs real quick, and we may have to cut this short because we started late, but how much do I need to spend to make it worthwhile? About $60,000 a month is enough in order for you to run MMM on media spend. Is it just to optimize paid media? Absolutely not. You can factor in things like SEO if you can forecast it, or direct mail as well into the model. What if I only run one channel? MMM can actually predict what would happen off a net new channel based on like clients that have ran this before with RevRx. So we can actually say, if you go into Meta, we expect to see a CPA of X, and we can input that into the model. How long does it take to work? We say a 25% improvement in your media effectiveness within the first year, so by the end of year 1. In conclusion, tracking channel contribution to revenue is very difficult. You may be overinvested in channels closest to conversion, especially if you're looking at blended CPA and not incremental CPA. MMM helps you correlate marketing investment and revenue. And if you spend more than $60,000 a month on media, this will or should bring value to your marketing efforts, especially if you're across multiple channels. And like I said just now, you could see up to a 25% improvement in your return on investment in 12 months with MMM. So I realized that I absolutely flew over this topic in 20 minutes. Happy to talk to any of you guys about RevRx and about media mix modeling in more detail if you're interested in it. But thank you very much for joining this session and for learning a little bit more about MMM.